Go ahead and call ourselves to order. I think first order of business is we'll try to take the last agenda by consent. Minutes from the last meeting, which I believe are included on top of your agenda. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Minutes are approved from the February meeting. First up, we have presentation on bullying and suicide prevention. It's been an active topic, I think, in our executive committee meetings and discussions here. We want to welcome Michelle Bullington, Bethany Gates, and Lucia Mercado to present. And then we'll have a little discussion and Q&A and an action item to follow that's on your agenda. Welcome.
Hello. And you got my name right. It's Bullington. Most people think it's Burlington, but there's no R.
I didn't even get it. It wasn't even spelled phonetically here, so thank you.
So my name is Michelle Bullington. I am the State Suicide Prevention Director at DMHA. And I'd like to let my colleagues introduce themselves first before we kick off. So Lucia.
Hi, I'm Lucia Mercado. I'm an Indiana Youth Advisory Board member on the Access to Care and Services and the Minority Health Committees. And I also attend Butler University, where I study healthcare and business, and I have a minor in medical Spanish.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bethany Getz. I'm the School and Community-Based Programs Director at the Division of Mental Health and Addiction. And let's see, I'm going to go ahead and just give us a little overview of what we're going to talk about today. So as Michelle and I were brainstorming and prepping for this presentation, we were really in agreement about a specific component that kind of is interconnected with youth suicide, bullying prevention, and really youth mental health overall, which is social media and the digital spaces that youth and really all of us are kind of interacting with all the time. And so this has come up in some internal DMHA conversations, as well as with our state partners and other key stakeholders in our youth mental health spaces. And so we're going to just start there. And Michelle's going to give an overview of her youth suicide prevention after that. And then I'll provide some additional information about other things that we've got going on in DMHA and with other state agency efforts. And just so we know like what is in place. And then finally, we'll hear from Lucia from our Youth Advisory Board. So I will pass it back to Michelle.
So yes, as Bethany mentioned, when we really started diving into preparing for this presentation and talking about suicide prevention and bullying prevention, a lot of our stakeholders were mentioning what's happening on social media. Our bullying efforts really need to pivot and be geared towards that. In the last 20 years, it's really shifted from, kind of the stereotypical, like the bully at the school pushing kids in their locker. Of course, bullying still happens in person, but there's a lot of things happening online that our research and programming hasn't really caught up to yet. And so I just really felt like it was important to give you some foundational knowledge on this topic before we dive into the programming that we do have and then recommendations for future programming. So in 2023, the U.S. Surgeon General launched an advisory on this topic on social media and youth mental health. And when the Surgeon General does this, it's because they feel that it's an urgent public health issue that we need to call attention to. We know that youth are using social media almost universally. 95% of youth report that they use social media, with nearly a third saying that they are on social media constantly. We also know that the minimum age requirement for most social media platforms, so when we say social media, we mean, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat, is the age of 13. But actually they found that almost 40% of youth ages 8 to 12 do have a social media account, which is an increase for concern as well. We also found that despite the widespread use of social media, there really is a lack of research in this area and a lack of programming. And so there's increased concern around that. And as well as the scientific community agrees that there is benefits and risks associated with social media. So I do think it's important, that we do highlight the benefits, even though we do see more risks because a lot of youth report a lot of positive connections because of social media. And there's also a need for action around this area to create some health and safety for our youth. So when we're talking about the impact of social media, it's really important to understand what we mean, what's influencing that impact. So the time that youth are spending on the platforms, the type of content that they consume, the activities and interactions that they engage in, as well as the degree to which these activities will interrupt their normal healthy habits. And one that I'm going to talk a lot about today because I am in the suicide prevention field is sleep. Because in the suicide prevention community, we see high correlations with poor sleep quality and suicide-related behavior. And youth report a lot of interruptions with their sleep because of social media. And then we also want to think about the identities of youth. Just as suicide impacts every individual individually, social media is going to impact youth uniquely based on their own characteristics. So their strengths, their vulnerabilities, if they belong to a historically marginalized community. So if they are a person of color, if they identify as LGBTQ plus youth, and other particular identities that they might have. And then we also, when we're thinking about the impact of social media, we really want to pay special attention to the fact that, and I know you all are part of the Children's Commission, so I don't want to over belabor this, but this is a particular time of brain development, ages 10 to 19. And so this is times when, risk-taking behavior is already going to be at its peak. Times when social pressure, peer opinions, comparisons are already going to be impacting youth. And so social media just impacts that even more. And so the benefits, when we're talking about the impact of social media, a lot of youth report that social media helps them build positive communities. Especially if they do identify with a historically marginalized identity, they can find a lot more connection online than they might find in person. In fact, 80% of youth report that they feel more connected engaging in social media. And also, research suggests that social media can be a buffer against stress. We saw this a lot during COVID. And one of the facts that I thought was particularly interesting, because I am a licensed clinician, is that research suggests that social media-based mental health interventions do help promote help-seeking behavior, and it can be a gateway for their initial mental health care. So I think that is really powerful. However, although we have a lot of benefits to social media, there are a lot of potential harms. We see that youth who spend more than 3 hours a day on social media, they almost double their risk for poor mental health outcomes. We see greater social media use as a predictor for poor sleep quality, online harassment, poor body image, poor low self-esteem, and higher symptoms of depression and anxiety. We saw in a survey in 2021 of 8th and 10th graders that they spend about an average of 3.5 hours online every day. And we also saw correlation research found higher mental health concerns among adolescent girls engaging in social media, as well as those folks who are already experiencing mental health challenges. And we saw cyberbullying related to depression, body image, disordered eating, and again, poor sleep quality. And I do just want to pay attention to what I mean by cyberbullying. So that is the use of technology to harass, threaten, embarrass, or target another person. This can be in the form of online threats, posts, text messages, aggressive comments towards another person. It can also be posting that person's personal information, pictures, videos, unwanted to target or harass that person. And we did see among 14-year-olds who used social media excessively that they showed greater issues with sleep, online harassment, poor body image, low self-esteem, higher depression. And then again, with potential risk of harm, we do want to think about a couple particular areas that are problematic: excessive use. Social media is inherently designed to maximize the time that somebody spends online. That's how the technology companies make their profits, through ads. So they want people online as much as possible. Unfortunately, we see that actually some researchers have found that those same brain pathways that are changed with folks who have substance use issues and gambling addiction, they see the same with people that are overusing social media, those same addiction qualities. And again, I know I belabor this fact, but the excessive use linked to sleep issues, attention issues, and feelings of exclusion. So on one hand, we have youth saying that they do feel more connected, but they also do feel more excluded. So we have that kind of bi-directional thing happening with social media, which makes it really complex. And again, I just want to highlight, the sleep is really essential for healthy development. I feel like this area gets overlooked a lot. And we do see a correlation with sleep issue and higher rates of suicide and suicide-related behavior, so thoughts and attempts among youth. And then just briefly touching on content exposure. So it's really easy for youth to have access to this extreme, inappropriate, hateful, harmful content. There aren't really a lot of barriers yet to being exposed to that. And we actually do see in the research that some child deaths have been linked to this exposure, especially suicide content, some of these like risk-taking challenges, self-harm behavior. We call this suicide contagion. When we are overexposed to something like that, it normalizes the behavior and then can actually increase the risk for suicide. So that is also especially concerning. And then we also see for adolescent girls reporting more issues with body image, self-esteem because of content exposure, as well as being contacted by strangers online in ways that make them feel uncomfortable. And then again, around the social media topic, there's just a lot of gaps in the evidence. It's really hard to say, hey, there's just one linear path that we could go down to fix this issue, because it's just not that simple. It's really complex. We also don't have a lot of access to data and transparency from the technology companies. So that really creates the barrier to us being able to understand the full scope of this problem. And we need a lot more research in this area. So then I want to pivot to talk more in depth about Indiana youth and Indiana youth risk for suicide. So I know that you all will be getting a presentation from the Department of Health later on about the newest youth risk suicide behavior, or the new youth risk behavior survey. But I do just want to touch on our data from 2021 as it correlates to suicide prevention. So we saw that about 47% of youth are reporting correlations with depression. So saying that for the last 2 weeks, not being able to engage in their usual activities. So that's almost half of our Indiana high school age youth. As well as we see that almost 28% of youth report that they have seriously considered attempting suicide. So not just those that have thoughts of suicide, but seriously considering attempting. And then we saw that 22% of those Indiana age youth reported that they had started to make a plan for how they might attempt suicide. And then 12% of our Indiana high school age youth are reporting that they have attempted suicide. This is pretty comparable to the national numbers that we see. Indiana, we tend to be about that mid to upper level among the states. We're not in the highest, but we're definitely, a little concerning. And then I want to touch on our youth suicide prevention grant program. So in 2021, the Division of Mental Health and Addiction, we were awarded a Garrett Lee Smith Youth Suicide Prevention Grant Program. This program runs until 2026. We have federal funding, so about $3.7 million. We are in the last 2 years of our program, so we are still looking at ways to be able to sustain these programs because this is all federal funded at this point. And we have 14 different initiatives. So we really wanted to have a comprehensive approach for our youth suicide prevention programming. So we have prevention efforts before the fact, intervention if a youth states that they are at risk for suicide, and then we want to pay attention as well to postvention, which is an area that gets overlooked a lot. So after a suicide death, because we know once somebody has lost someone to suicide, they are now 4 times more likely themselves just because of that loss to die by suicide, not accounting for any other factors in their lives. So it's really important that we wrap them up with a lot of care and support. So our programs range from school-based. We have Sources of Strength, which is also a program that the Department of Education funds as well. This is a mental wellness program as well as just whole child wellness program for schools. It's not only suicide prevention, but also physical health, mental health, there's 8 different areas of wellness. And this is a curriculum for the school to engage throughout the school year. It's not just like a one-time presentation. And it also engages adult advisors as well. We also have Ending the Silence, which is a NAMI program that presents to any school that wants to for free. And they also, the thing that's really awesome about this program is they do have a peer that talks to the youth. So that peer-to-peer connection we know is huge for youth. They're always going to talk to each other. They say that they talk to 4 people before they'll talk to a clinician. So we know engaging that peer-to-peer connection is huge too to that help seeking. And then we also have programs for help seekers to be trained if somebody discloses that they have thoughts of suicide, how to get them to support. We have clinician-based training. We have training for organizations as well as that loss support that I was talking about. So postvention, we have loss support group training and then bereavement training for clinicians if they have a client that has lost someone to suicide. The 2 other programs I want to call special attention to real quickly is just our local outreach to suicide survivors teams. These are actually activated by the local coroners or law enforcement, and they go to a suicide death scene and provide that immediate support to the survivors. So we're immediately getting them connected, which has been brand new for Indiana through this program. And now we have almost a third of our counties that have loss teams. And then I did just want to highlight our youth advisory board. So we felt like if we were going to have a statewide program for youth, we should obviously engage their voice, nothing for us without us. So we, in partnership with Department of Health, have a youth advisory board. We actually have one of our board members who's going to talk in a little bit about her lived experience. And we have youth representing 22 different counties from across the state, and they advise us. They also speak. They've gone to national conferences. They spoke at the Governor's Roundtable. So that has been a really great initiative. And so I will pass it over to Bethany, who's going to talk more about our other prevention programs.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. So first, and I'll try to zip through some of this, and that way we have enough time. I want to be cognizant of everyone's time here, but we pulled a few stats around youth bullying. And so specifically from our Kids Count data book, the most recent, just looking at children with 1 or more emotional, mental, developmental, or behavioral problems reported higher rates of bullying at 64% than those of their peers without any. Michelle mentioned this as well. 48, almost half of our schools provide parent and families with health information designated to increase parent and family knowledge on preventing student bullying and sexual harassment, including electronic aggression. So that's cyberbullying that we're talking about. And then approximately 26.5% of middle and high school students nationwide report that they have experienced cyberbullying. So I thought that was important as we're talking about this social media space. And then finally, just pulling from the Department of Education, they have annual reports and required reporting and training at the schools, the school level. And so in 2023, we did get the number that there were 5,460 total bullying incidents reported in 2023. So I'll talk a little bit more about DOE here in a moment, but wanted to mention that. Also, looking back at their data, since 2014, back in 2014, 10 years ago, the number of total bullying incidents reported was almost 10,000. So it has gone down. It has not been a steady decline. There's been some up and down over the years, but it is lower than it was 10 years ago, which I think is important to note. Next, I want to talk a little bit about just some general youth prevention efforts that we have going on at Division of Mental Health and Addiction and how those kind of cross and intersect with bullying prevention. So really what we have and what we support through our funding is substance misuse prevention and mental health promotion. And where those live are in those risk and protective factors. So we have programming that is really focused on reducing risk factors and increasing those protective factors. And there's a lot of overlap with bullying prevention. So those same target areas for risk and protective factors often overlap with other kinds of prevention, violence prevention, bullying prevention, suicide prevention. They all really have a lot of the same risk and protective factors. And so when we think about the different kind of categories of those, we think about family, those strong parent-child relationships, increasing those, that's a protective factor. Peers, again, relationships with their peers. Academic performance is a protective factor. Individual and environmental factors. So the things like self-esteem, like Michelle was talking about. And you know, if they have family members who have experienced addiction or substance misuse, those are all factors that are increase likelihood of substance misuse in youth, and also help protect from those adverse characteristics. So all of the programming that we support really is evidence-based programming and sometimes more up and coming programming that really target those risk and protective factors. And so we have different funded grants and contracts with providers across the state who work in schools or in the communities, and they provide an array of different programs. So I just, for one example, we have a program called BOTVIN Life Skills that a lot of communities have received over the years. And that really targets things like self-esteem, interconnectedness and relationships with your peers, and just really promoting those protective factors and reducing the risk factors. So all of the programs sort of do those things in one way or another. Some of them are more targeted towards suicide prevention specifically, or alcohol use specifically. But again, it's all often rooted in these risk and protective factors. And then finally, we really have a strong relationship with the Indiana Department of Education, specifically through our federal Project Aware grant. This is, we've been awarded actually 3 of these grants, and they are comprehensive school mental health infrastructure grants. And so working with up to, I think, 18 or 19 school districts across the state right now, they're really building a multi-tiered system of support where they've got supports for all students at the tier 1, working targeted with a tier 2 students, more students who are at risk or have been identified at risk. And then at the top tier, tier 3, connecting them with services as needed. I bring that up because there is a lot of, again, overlap and interaction when we think about bullying prevention, because any programming that they have in place at the school or in the community is often, a part of that larger picture in the school and what they're thinking about when they think about their students' mental well-being. Okay, so then what do we know we have in Indiana when it comes to bullying prevention and online wellness? And I'll talk about that here. But first, thinking about our state agency work, at DMHA, I just kind of mentioned the things that we do when it comes to prevention. Not necessarily specifically bullying prevention, but we know that those, again, there's that overlap in the risk and protective factors. The Department of Education, there's state statutes in place. Again, there's required school trainings and reporting that schools have to do. And then, just to kind of, as I take a step back, thinking about the definition of bullying that is being used really for Department of Education is overt, unwanted, repeated. I know Michelle kind of talked about cyberbullying specifically, but that is listed as repeated acts or gestures, including verbal or written communications, or images transmitted in any manner, including digitally or electronically. Physical acts committed, aggression, or any other behaviors that are committed by a student or a group of students against another student with the intent to harass, ridicule, humiliate, intimidate, or harm the other targeted student and create for the targeted student an objectively hostile school environment. And so there's, some other qualifiers there, but I think if we all think about the online spaces and the social media usage, that cyberbullying really stands out as I think about that definition and the ways that it can go unseen and unheard. And it is almost a more silent bullying factor that we're not really seeing, from our perspective, maybe of our kind of historical understanding of bullying prevention. So then when we think about some upcoming opportunities that DMHA has, we are looking to apply for a federal grant that is the Targeted Violence and Terrorism Prevention Grant. And we really are looking to use that to do some of this work in violence prevention, digital wellness, and youth resilience, really tying it to that online space. And so that's something that we're looking to do since this is an identified area of need that we've kind of been seeing, as we said, in our conversations. Additionally, the Indiana Criminal Justice Institute has school safe haven matching grant programs, and it helps schools carry out bullying prevention programs to create safe environments where students are able to learn and thrive. And those are evidence-based programs. It's required. And so we could kind of look to that space as something that is a standing program that one of our state agencies already supports. When it comes to our commission task force work, we have the Mental Health and Substance Abuse Task Force Subcommittee that has been, before unbeknownst to us even really, we're already diving into this the space of bullying prevention and digital wellness, and they've identified some different resources that do exist. The Act Out Social Issue Theater, young people who provide kind of theatrical performances around social issues have done a performance related to bullying and social media use. Holly's House has a curriculum where they're really exploring how to develop content related to bullying prevention on the online safety. And then Purdue University also has some school bullying prevention resources that they've identified. So they've been doing some of this research to find what exists in our state that we could look to. And then we also have the Education Outcomes Task Force, where I have chaired the subcommittee that is really focused on school-based mental health. And I think, just to kind of note that, like, identifying and encouraging adoption of effective interventions for youth who have individualized education plans, are involved with one or more of our state systems, such as FSSA. That is a space where we really have kind of a broad opportunity to approach the issues that our students are facing. And so mental health, and again, bullying prevention really falls interconnected with that. So just thinking about that space as an opportunity for us to do this work. And then finally, I've got some national bullying prevention resources listed here, just so we kind of know what we could reach to. National Bullying Prevention Month is October. There's a World Day of Bullying Prevention, which is October 7th. And then there's just some other resources up here. DMHA in the past has done some work in coordination with our Children's Mental Health Awareness Day during May. We've complemented some of that with Bullying Prevention Month. And so sort of having those 2 points within the year to really think about this space. It's not something that has happened in recent years, but I know that was happening really prior to the pandemic. And so that's something that we could look to our partners. Again, Mental Health America really worked with us on that. So just knowing that kind of is a historical space that we've worked in. So with that, I will pass it over to Lucia.
Good morning, everyone. I just want to start off by saying that I'm honored to be here, and I'm so grateful that you all want to hear my perspective. So I think that advancing the welfare of children in Indiana is something that I really hold dear to my heart, as seen through my involvement of the IYAB and why I love being a part of it. But we're not here to talk about the IYAB. So I do want to preface my conversation that while I am a youth perspective with lived experiences, I do not represent all youth voices. So I will try and stay holistic of my experiences, my friends' experiences, and just experiences in general. But I just want to preface with that. As for my timeline, it is a little different than a lot of youth that I know, but I'll explain that in a little bit. I started Instagram around 3rd or 4th grade. I had Snapchat in 7th grade. I had Kik in 7th grade, Musical.ly, which is now TikTok, in 7th grade. I had Omegle in 7th grade, Uvu in 7th grade, Monkey I never had, but a lot of my friends did. WhatsApp for as long as I can remember. And now I have Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat, WhatsApp, but we are growing up. I have LinkedIn now. I never had Twitter or X, but yeah. So as for why my timeline is a bit different, I grew up with social media, but I was not an iPad kid, so to say. I didn't have an iPad at 1 year old. I did have a Nintendo DS and we did have chat rooms, but it was not the mass communication and media that we have today. However, when social media picked up, when we had iPads and phones and all of those things, my mom was really quick to lay down boundaries, and she had strict boundaries, which was something that was not true for most of my friends. I had to turn in my phone at 9 p.m. every night, and she had all of my passwords. I had to talk to her before I downloaded something, and she was the only one that had the password to download something. I did work around that a couple times. At the time, that did isolate me from my friends, quite a bunch, but now I'm so grateful for that. However, even with all that control that she had in my life, there were still negatives to social media. But we're not going to start off with the negative. We're going to start off with the positives. I love social media. I love staying connected with everyone that I can on social media. I moved to the US when I was pretty young. So I came here when I was in 3rd grade. And my family stayed abroad. So my dad still lives abroad, and so does most of my family. So my way of communicating was through WhatsApp because it was the only free way to communicate and not have international call fees. I have most of my friends are international. I actually work with a lot of diversity ambassador programs where we have a lot of international friends. So I have friends who are in Mexico. I have friends who are in Israel. I have friends who are in Switzerland. My best friend is from India, but she lives in Japan right now. And that's how I stay connected, even with the different time zones. Many of my friends also live in different states because of college. So it's a great way for us to stay connected. I also feel like it is a modern journal. I have all of my Snapchat memories, which I usually go back, my Instagram. I usually look at it, and I love to travel, so that's where I post most of my travel pictures. I also think it can be a great avenue of expression. It's a forum for me to de-stress. I'm currently prepping for finals. So TikTok has been a saving grace at some moments. And it really helped during COVID. It was really a saving grace and an escape from reality. During COVID, I had around 12 to 16 hours of screen time. I was always on FaceTime with a friend. We slept on the phone together. We would wake up in the mornings and watch a movie together. We would play Parcheesi online with friends who were international. And it was just an escape from reality. And I also think it is a great place to learn. I learned about LinkedIn on social media. I learned about a resume and how to create a resume. I learned about high yield savings account, which is now what I have, and a Roth IRA, which is also what I have now, which I would probably not have known about until later on if it weren't for social media. So I definitely think that there are so many positives to it, but there are also a lot of negatives. I'm going to touch on my experiences as a woman, as a young girl, but just because these resonate with me more. And I will try and include a lot of my friends' experiences as well. One of the things that when I grew up was really big and still is Photoshop. And that was something that was on pictures and then became on videos. So people would post TikToks and those videos would be edited. So you would have a cinched waist or a smaller nose or bigger lips or whatever it was. And it consistently made you want to look like that person. And you wanted that to be your reality, even though that wasn't real for them. So I remember being 135 pounds. I was playing volleyball full time, and I was also restricting my meals to be skinnier. And I remember that being a constant thought in my head of, I'm not going to eat anything but popcorn and water today just so that I can be the way that this person looks on social media. And I know a lot of my friends who did water fasts for the whole week. They were like, oh, well, I'm just not going to eat for the whole week just so I can lose this weight to look this way. And that just created a complicated relationship with me for food and just binge eating and whatnot. But it did become a reality for many people who they thought that that was the normal, or they thought that's what you should look like. And that became a comparison. You would compare yourselves to their lives, their home lives, their social economic status. Maybe they had two parents in the household. That was something that you deeply wanted, and you see they're always going on family trips or they're doing these things. And social media doesn't always show the negatives. Now we're coming to a point where people are starting to, but before it was only the positives and people were only showing those things. And a lot of my friends struggled with mental health because of that. I've had friends who have called me at 3 a.m. because they just couldn't anymore. I've had friends who've unfortunately committed suicide, and then you feel like you could have or should have done something to be able to prevent that. And I have friends who didn't feel, and sometimes myself didn't feel good enough about themselves, would compare themselves to others physically. Maybe they weren't where they should have been career-wise, or maybe they should have been in high school on honor roll or whatnot. And those things would always transpire to the classrooms. Unfortunately, whatever happened on social media would come back home. So maybe you hear something in the classroom about how you should look, and then all the guys are saying how a girl should look. And if they don't, then that's also being talked about. Same thing with social economic status. And so that leads to my next point of bullying. I think it takes a whole new perspective when people can hide behind the screen. And please note, I didn't know what they were presenting, so I'm not going off of the points that they said. This is actually my experience. So I'm glad that you guys were able to kind of reflect that. But yeah, people were able to hide behind a screen. Rumors would start, and like I said, that would all come back to the classroom. So then not only are you getting it in the classroom, but you can't go home and relax and take a break. You have the social media, and maybe your home life is bad, and like your parents are screaming at you and you just need a break. So you go on social media, but you don't have that break. Yeah, I would have private messages and DMs of people telling me how ugly I was, and blocking wasn't enough. And sometimes it was just because someone didn't like you. It could have just been that someone didn't like you, or maybe they were jealous, or whatever it might be. But yeah, this was before the Instagram feature where you could block someone and block the existing accounts that were created after that. So back then people would just keep creating accounts and accounts and accounts, and it just became a continued thing. And I had a lot of friends who had to take a break from social media, but then they would feel excluded. So it really is a big problem. And I've actually known friends who have transferred to a different school because of how bad the bullying was. I've known people who have eaten in the bathroom because of how bad the school, or like the bullying was. And as I mentioned before, I know friends who have committed suicide because of it. I know people who have turned to substance abuse as a way to cope with the feelings that they had with social media. And I know a lot of girls who in middle school would be pressured into sending private pictures. And then the next week, everyone would have them. And that's something that with digital footprint is something that when you're younger, you don't fully understand. And maybe the pressures that you are experiencing as a young person just seems more or a bigger deal than maybe a future down the line digital footprint, which also leads me to my next point of predators. As a minor, I would receive messages from older adults all of the time, especially on Kik. They would disguise themselves as kids. So they would have pictures of a kid and then say like, oh yeah, I went to your school, or I go to your school. I just transferred to, I went to Wesleyan and I transferred to Northview, or hey, I went to NC and I transferred to wherever. I was luckily, like I said, my mom was really strict, so I never met anyone in person. However, one of my friends did, and he ended up being a grown man. On Snapchat and Instagram, I would get unrequested pictures from older men. I became desensitized to this, and I know that this is also the experience for most, if not all, of my girlfriends. I would become desensitized to it. I would block and just be like, oh, well, it is the reality, just move on. But looking back, with now being, I just turned 21, looking back, this should not and shouldn't have been and should not be normal for a 14 to 18-year-old. And sometimes blocking the person would make the matters worse. It would actually make me quite afraid sometimes. I would get a lot of hate messages if I blocked someone because they'd create another account, sometimes sending you your address. And I've known a lot of people who have had those negative experiences where they felt bad just because they said no. And so with those hate messages, I would get told that I was ugly or dumb or whatever was convenient at the time. And looking back, I can't believe I even gave it a second of like, what? But when I was younger, I believed it. I believed, well, maybe I am incapable of love because this person is saying this, or maybe I am just this worst person. And it hones in on the insecurities that you might already have as a young adult trying to figure out, well, in these cases, not even a young adult, like 11 is a child. So yeah, and that was really difficult. And so then I'll also talk about ease of information, which again was not something I planned to line up with you guys. But ease of information. A lot of us had to grow up really quick. I remember being desensitized to a lot of things and just thinking that it was normal. I went to North Central High School. We had so many teen pregnancies. We had teen pregnancies in middle school. I've known a lot of people to attempt and commit suicide. We had a lot of violence. One of my friends just got arrested just because of, I think, the influences of these things. There was a lot of gun violence at my high school and teen dating abuse as well. I think that drug use was also normalized and it was easier to get access to drugs because you could just text someone or everyone was just saying this, and that. And I also think that because of the mass media, things became normalized, kind of how you were talking about the suicide. Things became normalized and you were supposed to want to do certain things or not, or whatever. And same thing with like smoking and drugs. It was something and is something that is really normalized. And we see this with now the trend with Drunk Elephant. I don't know if you guys know that. It's a skincare line that's for anti-aging, but now 10-year-olds are like doing get ready with me videos on TikTok and saying like, oh, I want to like prevent these natural lines. And that can be really hard to deal with it as a 10-year-old. So yeah, I don't want to take up too much time. So sorry, I'm over my time. Moving forward, I just want to say, take my disclaimer from earlier. This is just one perspective. My mom limited my social media intake and I still had a lot of negative. But I've also had friends who have been completely isolated from social media and have had sometimes even worse negatives. So I also want to make sure that we acknowledge that people who are of color or people who are LGBTQ plus or whatever else that might influence to an increase of how this might feel and like the struggles that also go. So I just want to make sure that you're engaging as many youth as you can from different ages, perspectives, races, ethnicities, backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, and have them be involved. Have something like the Youth Advisory Board where you can uplift these voices, also get them involved in something greater so that they feel a sense of purpose, and also help to change the overall image of what youth are in Indiana. Okay, what is it? Thank you.
Let me ask her a question.
Yeah.
Yes, you may.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How old were you when you got your first phone?
I was late. I had a shared phone when I was probably 7. And, but I had to share it with my stepsister, so I only had it 3 days out of the week. But I had an iPad from most of my life, so you can have the same applications and you could just delete them and whatnot. There's a whole thing. I got my first actual phone in 7th grade.
In the school that you went to, were you allowed to have your phones with you at all times?
At first, yes, then no, but we still did. So it was like a rule, but everyone still had their phones on them.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Bernie.
Sorry. Actually, I had a quick question for either Michelle or Bethany. Bethany, you kind of anticipated my question. While Michelle was presenting, I pulled up the statutory definition of bullying, and I'm curious to know, and this might not be the time, but you looked at DOE's data. Do you think the statutory definition is sufficient? I mean, when we listened to Michelle talked about some of the bullying actually happens from people who don't go to the school. You got predators on the side, but what about upperclassmen who've graduated? They're in college now, but they're still reaching back and harassing people that they were recently in school with. So I was curious to know, one, do you feel like the statute needs to be updated, or is it fine in capturing the data of what's happening? And then my second question is, you both talked about grant funding to stand up these really great programs to reach out to kids. And, you know, we all know the nature of grant funding. It's great to start something. It's not great to sustain. I'm curious to know, we have 988. It's rolling out, it's growing. How is 988 as a sustained track or path for helping youth? Because it'll be there. And God willing, there'll be more funding for it and places for people to go. But I was curious to know what you guys thought about 988 as interacting.
I'll let Michelle talk about 988, but as far as the definition goes, I think that's a really great question. I'd have to maybe do some more digging to see if it really is like appropriate and when was the last update made. I think that's something that, you know, we are in conversation with our partners at Department of Education about. I didn't even think about, you know, students graduating and still harassing, you know, that this wouldn't cover that really, you know. And I will say that I did check in with our Project Aware schools and just sort of try to get a pulse where they felt, because bullying prevention is not necessarily a required component of that comprehensive school mental health approach, but it's in there for them. You know, they are the ones working on that if it's existing at their school. And, you know, they mentioned Olveus is a program that's a pretty standard program across the state that schools use, and that it requires updating and really fidelity monitoring to really monitor the things that it's there to do. So it takes a lot of focus and effort, you know, in a space where schools are stretched thin across all of these areas. So I think, you know, it certainly could use some looking at, I think.
Representative Summers.
I think I'm shocked by Ms. Bernice's statement. 'Cause I kind of thought they moved on. I mean, I guess I kind of thought that you would move on and not continue to go back to the high school and bully.
I don't have any data around that, so I don't.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
While you're on the podium there, you commented on the reporting numbers being down. And I've been working with some coalition of parents to help prevent suicide bullying up in northern Indiana. And they've had some parents that have had to move children several times because of the bullying in different schools, right? So they had to go to different school corporations. But the reporting wasn't there. So I guess I was hoping the DOE would be here today just to at least have a hear, understand, or at least be a part of the task force to say, how can we better? Are we putting too much burden on our schools with their programs and everything that they got going on? Or are we really being effective, right? Because we've had several suicides. Because you talked about attempted suicides, but the numbers, how many suicides do we really have in the state of Indiana? Do we have that data?
We do, but I mean, in the field of suicide prevention, we know that it's severely underreported. I won't get into why Indiana has coroners, but we don't have great training for folks. We put a lot on them We don't pay them well. And, you know, it's just like in a small community, sometimes a family will say, I don't want the death certificate to say that. And if it's elected position, they may not put it on there. We also know there's a high correlation with suicide and overdose. And some people think that it's common for notes to be left behind, but that's actually not common at all. And unless they know without a doubt that it was a suicide, they'll usually put, you know, unintentional, accidental overdose, unknown. So we just know that the numbers are, they're not accurate for what the full scope of the issue is. And I did want to go back to your question about 988. So I'm actually on the team with the 988 team. We're called the transformation team. We're the newest team at DMHA. We are rapidly growing. You know, unfortunately in Indiana, suicide prevention, really prior to 988, we didn't really have like a good, platform for funding. Even though my position is actually written in the Indiana code, there isn't funding attached to that. So everything that I do, is federal funding. So I mean, I'm always gonna say yes, of course, like we need more funding. But it's just, you know, 988, the lifeline, the call centers, having a place to go, getting, you know, to those different phases, that I'm sure you probably heard Jay talk about. That is just going to take years. And, you know, Indiana, we're kind of behind the curve with our crisis system, in terms of just like the funding, the programming. But yeah, that's definitely an area. And I always want to leave space for Jay if he wants to make another comment about it.
No, you cover, I mean, 988 is two things, right? It's a front door, right, to the system, and it's also, kind of scaffolding for other things, right? So the somewhere to go, someone to contact, but it is a system build out, and it's directly related to the CCBHC rollout, and so it's complicated for another day, but the answer is, I think, yes, the more we can leverage the existing infrastructure to serve all Hoosiers, the better off we are, as opposed to creating new things from scratch. Great job, Bethany, Michelle, Lucia. Thank you so much.
Just quickly, Department of Education is represented this morning. I'm learning a few things as I get to listen, but I know that our team has been actively engaged. I'm glad to put Representative Vaughn's question to our team back in the office. Thank you.
And then Ally.
Thanks for the great information this morning. I'm curious, have you heard of any formalized programs or opportunities where you have families in a community or school system who say, I'm just going to opt out? And so you provide that community space for families who have kind of taken a pledge. We're going to stick together with our families and our kids and not even expose them. And Lucia, you had an interesting remark about perhaps, you know, there's some danger of isolating or strict limitation. Have you guys seen any program like that? I feel like I've read something, but just didn't know the status. Right.
I can address that if you, Bethany.
I was racking my brain. I don't know that I have. But
So there are some, so the thing about social media is it's a collective action problem, right? As soon as 20-30% of, I'm making those numbers up, but as soon as a certain percentage of the school, you know, FOMO takes over, right? And then there's sort of like everybody kind of goes. So next month at the Behavioral Health Commission meeting, we're having a group of parents from a school who have done this voluntarily present on their experiences and their challenges associated with this sort of voluntary, but also, you know, parent-led effort to address the sort of FOMO issue. So it's a great question, Chris. And I think it's really, really complicated, and kind of crux of what we're talking about is like all the interventions are either too heavy-handed, right? Like, you know, government or interventions heavy-handed, or, you know, too individualized. Is there perhaps a middle way of kind of a parent and community-led effort? And maybe that's what you're getting at.
Yeah, thank you, Jay.
And I would just say that connects to something we've got on our last slide, which are some ways that we were thinking about what could help. One of the things that I think would be helpful is some broad educational opportunities for youth and families, for the communities, to just have some of this information and to be self-educated about and make those decisions, you know, and hopefully support positive decision making. And avoiding those risk factors, you know, so I think that educational piece is. But then just that's what we should be.
From my experience, so I come from a Hispanic family and a lot of my family, mental health is taboo and like talking about it is very taboo. So to your point of like not wanting to actually get those services. And I've actually had a lot of friends who had very strict parents. So whenever they brought mental health up to them, they're like, you're making it up. That's not a thing. We're not doing that. And then I've also had friends who have gone to, let's say, a therapist, but then they weren't completely sincere with their therapist because they felt like they would tell their parents. So that I saw a lot of that from like personal experience.
Thanks for sharing all your experiences.
Any other, oh yeah, sorry, Ally, I apologize, got lost.
No, it's okay. I just had a quick question. So the total bullying incidents reported by IDOE, do you know if that was like derived from disciplinary records or was that just voluntarily self-reported by the schools?
It is reported by the schools. It's part of that state statute. It's a requirement that they report that and they have annual reports and we could share those. I mean, I have all of them that I looked through, but I would have to kind of. like,
I
go
was
back
just
through it.
curious. Thank you.
Sorry, I have a follow-up question on that. So if they, do they report it? Is there anything statutorily that says that they should have a, like, develop an action plan or no? Okay. I'm just kind of thinking of it like how we do our mortality reviews, right? So it's not just a reviewing and a reporting on the mortalities. There's actually the requirement of taking a next step and saying, here are the actions we're going to take, look for themes, et cetera.
Yeah, I don't know for sure.
Okay.
I know that like when I've talked to schools, they said that it could use some bolstering around things like what you're talking about. So I
Okay.
think that would be helpful.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to thank you. Judge Kenworthy reminded me that I've been on the commission maybe longer than almost anyone on here, which is yeah, no, not you. I know, but pretty long. And that really, Lucia, I mean, that was really one of the, and I don't know if it's because I have 6 and 3-year-old girls and who just turned 6 and very powerful, anchored in facts. You told all sides of it and you really did speak probably not just from your perspective, but you know, whether the dates and times are different, but really, I mean, the incredible amount of interest around this, but you really brought a personal perspective on it. We're lucky to have you on the Youth Advisory Board. Just thank you for all your efforts and all 3 of you. I mean, DMHA is lucky to have you all as well. That was one of the best presentations I've seen on this commission or maybe in state government. So thank you very much. And I do think that that sort of pivots to this. There's a lot of interest and obviously a lot of efforts around this. Project Aware was mentioned. I do think we should look at on the executive committee of maybe bringing DOE in. They have a lot of touch points around this. I'm very interested in what resources we may or may not provide. I won't burden you with a question for parents. So you mentioned some of the volunteer efforts going on, but I assume that's to sort of fill a void where parents don't necessarily know what to do. You had parents that were actively engaged in what your social media engagement was, but do parents know what to do and do they need some resources as well? So, oh yeah, Representative.
I guess my question also is that I see that it's federally funded, but the state needs to have a stake. There has got to be some way that we wrap some money around this issue that is state money.
Yeah, I think
Because
there's
federal money, it's a scary thing.
the sustainability of some of the 14 programs and
Right.
probably many others is probably something worth looking into with this group and really understanding what the outcomes are. So I think there's more to do and maybe more for the executive committee to do. Along those lines, we do have an action item to try to bring some of that up to the surface and also some deeper work outside of these meetings. And that is to approve the creation of a new task force around, I think it's a new task force around bullying. I think this sat under another task committee. I'll let Mark sort of give a little bit of the genesis of this, but I think this discussion illustrates certainly the need for some independent work on that.
Yeah, and I think our presenters did a great
Yeah.
job already describing that this really crosses over all of our task force in some areas where we're looking at the mental health components, we're looking at the youth safety components, we're looking at how it interfaces even with juvenile justice and youth that are within the systems, and of course, with Department of Education and all the work the schools are doing, but also how much things like bullying maybe started as largely a school-based issue 30 years ago or so, when we won't date ourselves how long ago some of us were in school. but it's morphed into something that goes well beyond that. And I think there's a need to broaden those definitions and look more deeply at that. So with that spirit, really came the idea that we need to, with it being so cross-cutting and so large of an issue, to form a separate task force on bullying and suicide prevention where we can continue this discussion that could probably go on today for hours and hours and still not get us
Oh,
to
that's
an
right.
answer.
And do we have an idea who would populate that commission, that task force? I missed the last executive committee, so
Yeah,
I'm
Well,
probably.
we definitely have a lot of volunteers. A lot of it will
Good.
be reorganizing. Some of the folks we have internally that are already part of the commission process and other folks coming in. Of course, we have 3 wonderful volunteers
hope we
right
have some
here. I'm
volunteers.
sure we'll have a role in that. So yeah, we'll look at presenting chairs probably by the next commission meeting.
Well, I will, probably won't have to look hard. Do we have a motion to create that task force?
So move.
In a second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, task force is created. Thank you very much. Thank you, really. Up next, we have Indiana Youth Services Association, David Westenberger, and I believe Robin Donaldson are here to present. Welcome.
Okay, here we go. I'll do my best on the podium. I'm a 30-year youth worker and was a camp director for a lot of my career, so this is not my element, but I'll try to stay put here for you. Thanks for having us today. What a great segue, and our partners and friends at FSSA, who you'll see that we're doing some of the same work around these tough issues at a community level. So Indiana Youth Services, we celebrated our 50th year in 2023. We're made up of organizations all across the state delivering community-based services to address much of what you just heard about and more. We're going to go through those. One thing that makes us unique, I believe, is our comprehensive approach to not just youth issues, but how those services are delivered, who's delivering those services, how those folks are doing, what we can do to support them, et cetera. It's not just about directing services toward youth. It takes a comprehensive system to make that high quality and high impact. I'm going to talk about the sort of comprehensive suite of things that we do, and then Robin's going to get into some of the program specifics and some data that we can show you. But I want to touch on Lucia's presentation just for a second. I know you said it's limited to your circle, right? But it's common. It's predominant. That's the status of youth right now, what they're dealing with. Fortunate for you, and you mentioned protective factors. The number one protective factor for young people is a positive, caring adult. And Lucia mentioned her mom several times. And that is your positive, caring adult and the number one protective factor. I'm sure you know that, but it's important to recognize that. Unfortunately, for a lot of kids, their parent isn't that positive, caring adult for many reasons. That's not a judgment statement. It's just the status of where we are today. And our community-based programs can often provide that. And again, you'll see in our background and foundational work in understanding trauma and all kinds of things with youth and brain development, that's a protective factor that needs to be out there. And we really try to drive that. So quickly, our programs not related specifically to the prevention programs we'll highlight today, which are youth service bureaus and Safe Place. I'll talk about our other initiatives across the state. Some of you may be familiar with the Indiana Trafficking Victims Assistance Program. So that's a statewide effort run by IYSA. We have staff all across the state, and this is for the prevention of human trafficking against minors. It's for the identification. It's for victim services. It's training victim service providers how to best serve those folks. Again, it's bringing a whole network of people together to respond to the unique needs of that dynamic, which is very prevalent in Indiana. We have partnerships, as you can see. We work with DCS, local, state, federal law enforcement, the FBI, Homeland Security, et cetera. It takes all of us together to understand the dynamic, educate folks so they can identify red flags, and help remove victims from those situations. So we educate communities, we educate service providers, we educate law enforcement, healthcare, all those folks that see those red flags and are serving victims of human trafficking and don't even realize it. And so that's really where we start again in that awareness level. And then we make sure services are there for those folks all across the state, young people across the state. ultimately, that program, and we are being successful now across the state in establishing coalitions. So that's bringing those communities together so that they can then sustain this work on their own, right? Somebody mentioned grants aren't always sustainable. So when you build that momentum in a community, they'll carry on that work. We'll still be a connector, but hopefully that's our sustainability plan, is that the communities and regions carry on with that on their own. Make good decisions. Another issue affecting young people. A young person under 21 every 40 hours dies of alcohol poisoning. In 2011, the state of Indiana passed what we call the Lifeline Law that gives immunity to underage drinkers in the event of an emergency medical situation or they're a victim of or witness a crime. Tragically, there was a family that lost their son a year after that was in the media quite a bit. We partnered with that family and former Senator Jim Merritt, who wrote the law, authored the law, and spent the last 10 years on a large media and educational campaign to prevent that from happening again. We've had 55 families call us and say their child's still alive because their friends were aware of that initiative through our awareness campaigns. We know the number is much higher, but we're meeting kids where they are. It's social media. We had a week when Pat McAfee did a social media post for us on Make Good Decisions that had 7 million impressions. So it's getting out there. And so we also go to college campuses, high schools, et cetera. What's really unique about this program is the partnership with the statewide 911. We're the first state, as you know, to be able to text 911 anywhere in the state. That's what kids do, right? And so we're really educating kids. If you see this situation, if you think of your friends at risk, you can text 911. And the beauty is you can text 911 and nobody else knows that's what you're doing. So you're not called out as the person who told on them, got people in trouble, et cetera, right? And you're saving a life. So great program that we continue to run all the time, specifically, especially around homecoming and prom. That's when we really double down on our social media presence. So I mentioned, we also try to take care of the people doing the work. We all know about vicarious and secondary trauma. It's hard to go and be in this career and do these things and work with these young people and the things that you see and understand and take home with you, and they change you as a person. So for 20 years, we've worked with now over 1,500 youth workers across the state from 600 different organizations to give them renewal strategies and skills so they can stay fresh and strong for the young people that they work with, and help them also understand what a career might look like in the field. It's not very obvious when you go, like I did as a college student, high school student, go work in a youth serving organization. Nobody ever painted the picture that I could be the CEO of a statewide youth serving organization, not like going and clerking and working in a law office and understanding what the trajectory is, right? So it's important to do that because the workforce in youth work, we estimate it's around 30,000 people. A lot of those are younger, and we want those folks to stay in. Experience matters. We want to grow people in the field. The journey also creates communities. So like many other professions, you have a community of folks. You have folks outside of your profession you connect with through associations and professional groups, et cetera. Youth work has lagged in that. And so we've established that. That was one of the things we heard in a study last year was, I want to be connected to something greater than just the youth serving organization I work in. And so we've established those across the state as well. We offer things through that program like access to things like the Calm app and financial literacy applications, things that youth workers are struggling with that often make them leave the field. So as I mentioned, our ACEs work. So actually about 12 years ago, we helped DCS bring Rob Anda to Indianapolis to educate all DCS workers on the ACEs study in trauma. We've continued that work. We have formed the ACEs Indiana Coalition, and we continue to work with Dr. Anda on that and have educated people all across the state to teach their communities about trauma, the effects of trauma, brain science, brain development, epigenetics. We're the only state that Dr. Anda has been involved with. It has also included historical race trauma in that education. It was not included in the original study. It's important. Young people want to understand it as well. So we've included that. Partnerships to help spread that across the state in communities as well as state agencies. We work with the Department of Health, Department of Education, DCS, et cetera. They're all FSA. We're all in together. The cogs on the side represent that ACEs education and trauma education can't be isolated in one system. It has to be a collaborative system of everybody involved, much like the body of this organization. You need people from all directions that are working with youth to really understand trauma. Uh-oh. Okay, didn't miss one. Another thing we recognize are competencies. There's no clear path to develop competencies for people that work with young people. So about 6 years ago, we adopted a national certification to bring competencies to youth work, where people identify the trainings, the skills they build, their educational background, and receive a credential. It's also, again, a field that didn't have that before. We're proud that Indiana has 500 credentialed youth workers. That's the most of any state in the country. Some of the ways they do that, they can attend courses that are 2 weeks long and receive that credential and training. We align those trainings with all the other conferences in the field, like Indiana Youth Institute and Indiana After School Network. So when people go, they know which competency that conference, that workshop addresses, so they continue to renew and build on their strengths and skills. We also have worked to get youth work identified and recognized by workforce development as a profession, which it wasn't there. Department of Labor, that it is an apprenticeable track that you can go work as an apprentice and learn just like other professions. These things didn't exist. And we're excited to launch that we'll be offering ACP credits, so college credits to high school students who may be working in youth service organizations across the state through IU and Ivy Tech. So again, advancing the field, right? We know the issues, but our system isn't quite there yet. And we believe that there's a comprehensive set of things that will help elevate the impact that we can have. I talked a little bit about taking care of the folks. It is a system. We work with organizations to help drive organizational culture based on SAMHSA's 8 dimensions of well-being. That's the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration and the federal government. So we've developed an organizational guide so youth work organizations can look at how do they support the overall well-being of the people doing the work within their organizations. As I mentioned, it's hard work, vicarious trauma, et cetera. We've also connected it to other initiatives in the field. We held a planning grant that led to the development of an investment of $20 million by the Lilly Endowment into youth worker well-being, which gives youth workers access to telemedicine, telemental health services, organizational supports, and organizational grants to, again, take care of the people doing the really hard work. So we're here today really to talk, and I flew through that as quick as I could to really get to what we want to talk about, connecting it back to the previous presentation. Our founding purpose and our core still to our mission and what we do are the youth service bureaus across Indiana. There are 26 accredited youth service bureaus in Indiana. I tell people those are the organizations in the community that are really charged with driving and improving the quality of life for young people and families in their community. When you think about things that exist for young people in your community, you should always be thinking about the Youth Service Bureau. That's how they should position themselves. Not do everything, but convene, make sure that needs are being met for young people in their communities. Those have a reach of about 60 counties in Indiana. You'll hear about our 9 funded programs. So we have funding models for programs that impact youth across the state. Counseling, shelter, recreation, things like that. Robin's going to get into that more. We build capacity with those organizations too. Youth want to talk about diversity. We want to help youth workers be prepared to have those conversations. Youth workers struggle with administrative and management and things just like the rest of us do. And so we do crowdsource coaching, which is peer coaching, where they come and share with each other about how things are working in their organization and learn best practices, et cetera. And some other things that just the world is requiring these days, like cyber insurance. And these aren't things that a lot of organizations have resources to pay for, but they need to get up to speed on how to protect themselves and data and information. And so we support all of that. We've fortunately had a partnership with Wish TV over the last year or so, doing a statewide campaign to inform people about these. You know, it's not good to be the best kept secret in Indiana. So we're not anymore. And Wish TV has been great. And there'll be a website link at the end where they feature a different youth service bureau and the people doing the work, do segments with those folks. And it's a page on the Wish TV website. Funny story. Sorry, I'm trying not to take up all the time, but funny story. We didn't plan on there being a Wish TV webpage. We just did some segments. And after the second month, Wish TV came to us and said, we've had a huge spike in our website, and it's all because of the segments on the youth work. So we've decided to add a page for this. So people want to know, people are responding. It's important work. So the Safe Place program is also a way for young people to reach out in crisis and get access. There are many ways they can do that. Robin's going to get into that, but we have 16 programs that serve about 26 counties across the state. Some of that funding comes from DCS and a partnership with FSSA, specifically around suicide prevention, and we'll get into that in a minute. We have seen, just like the other stats show, that the top reason for kids reaching out for help through Safe Place is suicide ideation. So we're seeing it across many programs in ways that we work with young people. So I think that was a duplicate. So I'm going to hand it over to our Chief Impact Officer, and she will tell you she's also a data nerd and likes to get into some outcomes and things and graphs. So you're in good hands to really understand the impact of what we're doing across communities in the state.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I am a data nerd, and I will fully admit that. And so I get the wonderful job of being able to celebrate what we're doing with our youth service bureaus and our Safe Place programs. As you can see, we do have 4 different core roles. That is part of an Indiana state statute. And those, so our youth service bureaus and IYSA in support of those are charged with providing delinquency prevention. We really kind of look at this as positive youth development, because as they mentioned, when you are doing positive youth development, when you're doing true prevention work, you are really increasing those protective factors. That is the core of what the funding goes to through our DCS to our youth service bureaus. And we served about 3,600 kiddos. This was last year, so in 2023. Those are funded youth. And funded youth, so that number actually represents about 20 to 30% of the actual number that our youth service bureaus are providing services for. They do not get state funding or through our YSB grant to actually pay for all of the kiddos. So they're doing much, much more than what those show. We also advocate on behalf of young people and families. And that was, and these are different incidents. So over 50,000 times we advocated on behalf of a young person. That includes going to schools, that includes going to courts with them, advocating with them with DCS. So they really are helping provide that child a voice, those families' voices in what makes a difference to them. We do a number of community education events. So again, that is, we're reaching over 200,000 individuals across the state of Indiana, talking about youth issues, talking about bullying, talking about the dangers of social media, talking about suicide ideation and how real that risk is for our young people. And then when we are working with young people, we will do information and referral. We often provide many of those services, but there's sometimes that we have to reach out and actually connect them to other services. So again, over almost 140,000 referrals. This is all 1-year data around this. So they're actually doing, and as we know, our numbers are underrepresented. Our agencies do a lot more being able to collect those, remember to gather all of that information. So those are probably low numbers. I wanted to be able to kind of share some of the impacts. So one of the things that our youth service bureaus does, especially for our YSB funded kiddos, they do an evaluation. So it is an outcome assessment that looks at some of these core factors that we know are important when it comes to young people being successful. So looking at things like gaining skills and knowledge. And so on the charts that you see, the green are an increase, the orange has stayed the same, the blue is lower. We're actually at the first one looking at school intervention. So school intervention typically is an alternative to suspension for young people. Several of our YSBs provide this service. They also go into the school and provide additional supports to young people who have been identified as needing that additional help. And so we see that actually that gaining skills and knowledge is there. We also look at risk and protective factors. And obviously, when we want to decrease risk factors and we want to increase protective factors. And there's a really big increase in protective factors when we're looking at school intervention. We do look at academic success. We want to keep young people in school. We know that if they progress academically through school, there is a greater increase in their chance of being successful. And so we look at that. You see that. But that connection to positive, caring adults is hugely important. Very often, the young people will go to our YSB staff folks because they know that they care. They know that they're going to be there consistently, that they're going to do that advocacy on their behalf. They're going to connect them to those resources, communicate with the schools, communicate with parents to educate them on the things that are important to young people. So that positive, caring adult piece is there. And then we do ask it, and this is not a statistical question, but we do ask about the improvement of overall life circumstances, and we see that increase. When we look at this in terms of case management, you'll notice that there's a significant increase in gains around this. And we included case management because most of our case management programs, so we have a program in Scott County, we have a program up in Fort Wayne, YMCA Youth Service Bureau, that really focuses on truancy prevention. And making sure that the young people have the resources and the supports that they need to keep them in school. And again, look at we have an increase in academic success. We have a huge increase in protective factors when we're looking at that, because very often we know that young people aren't getting to school, not because of their own fault, but because there are challenges within the household that make it difficult for them to get up and to be able to attend school. They're dealing with the trauma, and that always comes first. I'm also a big neuroscience nerd as well. And we know that when young people are when anyone is facing challenges, our own safety becomes a priority. And the academic success takes a back seat to that. So being able to provide them with skills to deal with what's going on, again, that increase in academic success, a huge increase here in that connection to a caring, positive adult, someone who's going to be there no matter what. And so both of these programs have been highly successful in keeping kids in school and advancing that academic success. Another outcome we look at is mentoring. Again, positive, caring adult. If I ruled the world and I could do one thing for young people, that would be to give them one person in their life that felt that the world revolved around them. Because we know that positive, caring adult is often the one thing that actually buffers the rest of the adverse childhood experiences in their lives. And so mentoring, again, no big surprise, we have an increase in protective factors and that increase in that positive, caring adult. What I love about our outcomes, and I did pick programs based upon what we knew you guys were going to be talking about today to show that these are actually having a positive impact on our young people. That it's not all, well, it used to be all feel good, right? I've been around long enough in youth service. We did things that we like to do. We did things that used to make us feel good, but that's not enough anymore. We have to look at the impact on our young people. And so moving our programs to those outcome assessments, being able to look at and then share the positive impact that they're having on young people is important. The last program that I picked is Teen Court. Teen Court is a diversion. If you're not familiar with Teen Court, it is a diversion program, usually for young people who have first-time involvement with the justice system, fairly minor charges that allows them to learn about better choices, to connect them to better peers, to learn other skills. A lot of times it is a lack of being able to self-regulate, to deal with anger, conflict resolution. And so we picked Basher. You guys are familiar with Basher Children's Home up in Elkhart, Goshen, Indiana. They have absolutely phenomenal outcomes when it comes to their teen court. Their recidivism is minimal. When it comes to kids re-engaging in delinquent behavior. And so again, it just goes to demonstrate that, you think about Teen Court and you think about, okay, so this is a program that we want to minimize risk. And we did that a little bit, but what really stands out with these the outcomes that you see is that increase in protective factors and the increase in that positive, again, positive caring adult, that person that's going to be on their side. All of our outcomes show that kind of connection, which I was a little bit surprised at, was that improvement in life circumstance. But kids enjoy our programs. They enjoy that, they really enjoy that connection, and knowing that there are adults out there who care about them and are willing to provide services and take the time to listen to them. Near and dear to my heart is our Safe Place program. So I have 30+ years in youth services, and I worked at the Youth Service Bureau of Monroe County for several years, and was the Safe Place coordinator, That was my introduction to Safe Place. Safe Place is an early intervention and prevention program that is a national program. It has been around since 1983. It came to Indiana in 1987. And so looking at, and so when David hired me to come back to Indiana, because I was working at National Safe Place when I came back, our goal was to have Safe Place in all 92 counties. We're still working on that goal. We have a way around that, to make Safe Place services available to kids even when there aren't programs. But just looking again at 1 year worth of services, our 16 Safe Place agencies provided outreach to over 260,000 young people. So over 260,000 young people learned about the program and how they could get help if they needed it. We also provided this information to adults because we know often adults are interacting with young people. And through our partnership with FSSA, we actually have a youth audience initiative where we're educating firefighters, school personnel. We're looking at DCS workers, other service providers, and law enforcement, because oftentimes those are their first on site, when there's a conflict or something that's going on. So educating those adults about Safe Place, that they actually can refer that young person to this program to get them connected to safety and help, has been hugely successful. We've seen a significant increase. It's more than doubled since we started that initiative, reaching out to adults and having them also provide that information. We have almost 2,000 Safe Place sites across the state of Indiana. And again, 1 year we had 719 young people actually access help in our 26 communities through Safe Place. So Safe Place actually works through this partnership with a youth service organization and the community. It is a community initiative. This would not work without buy-in from businesses. We often have schools as Safe Place partners, firefighters, fire departments were the first Safe Place in Louisville. We have a number of fire departments across the state of Indiana that serve as Safe Place sites. And so what happens is they put that sign up. And when our coordinators go out and they talk to young people about this program and how they can get help, they say, look for the sign. You can go in there. All of these sites are trained. So anyone who works in this has had training on Safe Place, and they can walk in. It really is an addition to, it's an open door. It's actually multiple doors to accessing services for those young people and a way to connect them. The tagline for Safe Place is somewhere to go, someone to help. And so sharing that information. The community buy-in is great. And oftentimes we might have an agency that might want to not do Safe Place anymore. And the community says, no, you have to continue to do this. This is a wonderful option for our young people. So what happens is kids will walk in, they they identify that they need help. They'll call the local youth service agency, and then we will meet with that young person and do that referral. In addition to the actual walk-in, and we don't have a lot of kids walking into sites anymore. The number one referral source really is the schools. And we do have a number of schools across the state or Safe Place sites. They learn about Safe Place a lot of times in the schools, so they'll make that connection there. After the schools, libraries and grocery stores are the second high, and fire departments are the ones that the kids tend to go to. But in addition to that, we also, National Safe Place rolled out in 2012, the Text for Help initiative. This is a nationwide initiative. And it, again, meeting kids where they are. they are on their phones. No one wants to talk anymore. If I want to reach my kids, I text, I don't call. And so understanding that, we created the Text for Help. I was at National Safe Place when this happened. And it is kids, so we again educate kids. There's a number that they text, and they just text the word help. What they get is an immediate response with the closest Safe Place site, the number of the closest youth serving organization. If there's not a youth serving organization that has a Safe Place program, they will get one of the runaway and homeless youth shelters. If it's within 50 miles, outside of that, they get the National Runaway Safe Line number if there's not a program. In Indiana, because I want to be in all 92 counties, we changed this so that we actually have now communicate signs that for young people, it's a youth initiative where they can get a QR code that will take them to the National Safe Place website and shows where the Safe Place locations are, or they get a staffed 24/7, 365-day phone number where they can make that connection. So they actually will get a live person to be able to talk to that. So even in those communities where we don't have those 16 Safe Place communities, we don't have, they're not reaching out. Kids still have a way to get help through our Text for Help program. All right. This is going to pop up.
I had a suicide date in place. It was about 2 weeks out. If it weren't for my Safe Place coordinator, I'd be dead. Cameron definitely saved my life that day, regardless of who tells the tale. Like, he saved my life, 120%.
My job is to provide as many opportunities for resilience for a kid like Savannah. Savannah advocates for herself. She's a powerful woman. One thing about her is that she is going to decide her own destiny. And I just look forward to seeing what Savannah does in the future.
If you are looking for help and you think that there is no one who's going to help you, call Safe Place. They definitely offered probably the best help that anyone could get in a situation like this. Transportation issues, food issues. It's probably one of the best resources and outlets for people like me and for younger people. They will do everything in their power to make sure that you're okay.
And that's from our program in Fort Wayne.
I had
there we go. Cameron Shackelford is still a Safe Place coordinator in Fort Wayne. He has a wonderful, just warm presence. He is probably one of our best spokespersons when it comes to Safe Place. And I can't say it any more powerful than what Savannah did. This program is there to help young people. And we know that they are struggling. There's an increase in their mental health issues, a huge increase in suicide ideation. Up to January of 2022, the number one reason that young people were using Safe Place in Indiana was because they were running away from home. And that was pretty consistent for probably 10 years. That was the number one reason that kids were using Safe Place. And then I do quarterly reports looking at the numbers, and I ran the first quarter of 2022, and suicide was the number one reason that young people were using Safe Place. And I went, that's what I do wrong. It can't be right. And I ran it again, and it was correct. And that has kind of remained the number one reason that young people are actually using Safe Place. So when we talk about this, and this is like 36%, well, what's 36%? 36% is 162 young people who potentially did not commit suicide because this program was there to help them. They actually reached out and received those services. You guys have the pie charts. Family problems, which often lead to suicide ideation and runaway, is the second highest number. Homelessness, and we know that kids run away from, they are homeless because they are leaving problems. So all of this really kind of points to kind of what's going on within homes that, people don't feel safe around that. This is an issue. We know that young people are struggling with mental health. And so our response, thanks to the funding that we provide, that we get from FSSA, was to do that youth choice and educate those adults to have campaigns. We now have media campaigns, social media campaigns, and material that target young people so that they know this program is there, that it's an option for them to actually reach out and get help and then receive that connection to services. So this is a significant, this is a significant issue. And we stepped up. All of our Safe Place coordinators go through the QPR training, which is the suicide prevention training that is offered by Michelle. And so we partner with them in making sure that our communities and our understand, so we can actually do that suicide prevention and then provide the support around that. So young people are facing a lot more serious issues than when I first entered the field. And we know that. So we have tried to respond to that and provide young people with the options of being able to connect to those that help. This shows that when we get young people, a young person does come into the program through Safe Place, that we're actually making them connection to services. So we're looking at this. This was part of a pilot program that we received additional funds through DCS to look at that connection and to see what type of difference really Safe Place was. Kids coming into Safe Place, they're getting connected to services. And we look at this follow-up, this is the follow-up to 7 days after, but we continue to look at that, 3 months, and make sure that they're staying connected. And if there are those barriers, because we know that there often are, there's a wait list a lot of times for mental health services, that our Safe Place coordinators are staying connected through that case management and providing that support to our young people. In addition to those connection with services, and this is just kind of shows what the referral type is, it really is across the gamut. A lot of it is connection to mental health services. But we also are providing housing support. We're providing transportation support. We're providing support for them to be academically successful in their schools, and family support. So it runs the gamut. Safe Place is there for any young person who needs help for any reason. And this shows that we are actually making those connections to those referral sources. And finally, we are keeping kids out of the system when it is appropriate. That was one of the things that we wanted to make sure. This was, again, part of that DCS pilot program. There are cases in which it is totally appropriate for a young person to become involved in child protective services. For us to call, we're mandated reporters. They need that additional support because of substantiated abuse or neglect. But for the most part, the kids who are coming into our services, it's the first time they've asked for help. And that's kind of remained the same the entire time I've been involved with Safe Place. It is the first time kids are asking for help. And we are able to provide them that connection to services, the support that they need to keep them out of the system. And this is both DCS and juvenile justice. All right, did you want to do the opportunity? Turn it back over to my boss.
Stay up in case there are questions. So just real quick, we've talked a lot about the opportunities there. Obviously, there's more work to do. There are communities that don't have access to this, that aren't organizing and convening around these things. And that's can be a significant amount. 32 counties in Indiana don't have access to most of these services, except for the ones that are available via text. And we know that's not best, right? Those tend to be also the areas that are always the ones that lack services. The southeastern portion of the state, northwest of here, there's a gap, right? It holds true when we look at all kinds of services in the state. So there are opportunities and to improve that. And as Robin said, Safe Place, we really like to see that expand. It's such a effective program. You saw how many, the idea is if they access, it's prevention. If kids can get help somewhere before they need to turn to formal services such as child welfare, corrections, juvenile justice, et cetera, we're lessening the burden on those systems. What's really that last bullet is our philosophy is driven in, you've heard today, compelling stories that the needs are really, really high. In fact, they're too high for our public systems to meet the need. And we can't build systems that will meet all the needs to respond to the needs that are out there. What we can do is invest in prevention. We can build prevention models that are far cheaper to build, that make the systems not be so overburdened. So I think really what we wanted to drive home today is prevention work works. And our state is doing a really good job, not just us, many partners, of really figuring out how to make that work and starting to understand that prevention work will reduce the responses that we just can't provide. And we could never provide and build a system to provide. So thanks for your time today. If there are questions for us or either, we're all kind of partners in crime in this. So yeah.
Dr. Weaver, then Representative Vaughn.
Hi, thank you so much for your great presentation. Really important data. I'm also a data nerd. So thank you for all the work you're doing and then also showing how it has been beneficial. I would like to help you meet your goals. So we are our local health departments across the state have opted in, most of them now 87, into Health First Indiana funding. One of their objectives is trauma and injury prevention. So I think this aligns really well with the work that you do, that they can help be connected. I can even see them being safe places, right? Or helping identify people in your community and kind of really rallying around this work. So would love to invite you guys to meet our regional teams that are working with their local health departments on a regular basis, come and present, and maybe we can marry your guys' hopes and dreams along with ours, because I agree with you. I believe in prevention.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Yeah. And we are involved in the ACEs, with our ACEs work in the Rural Healthcare Initiative and the trauma informed piece and the healthcare side and Department of Health, but outreach to youth would be great. That's a great, thank you. Yeah.
What's the average age or the youngest age that you would start seeing somebody come in at? Is there any averages or is it across the board?
In Safe Place, yeah, 13, 14,
Okay.
early. That, we all know, right? That awkward stage, age.
And at what point do you know DCS needs to be called in?
Well, in Indiana, everybody is a mandatory reporter. The challenge is not everybody knows what necessitates reporting. But our folks are, they're trained on, it's very clear, abuse, neglect, those types of things. It's not a discretionary decision. It's it's clear when kids need access to an intervention by DCS. And so, but a lot of the time it's early on and we can prevent a lot of that. Yeah. Does that answer your?
Yeah.
So
I also wanted to know, I think her name was Rebecca that we heard on that video. But I aged out of foster care, and growing up in my household, I had heard at school about Safe Place. And it was kind of like a beacon of hope, literally at the end of the road. And like over and over, when I see like that yellow sign as a kid, it gave me so much hope that like there would be help at the end. And still as an adult, like every time I see a Safe Place sign, like I genuinely smile, because I think that it gives like somebody like who's growing up in a terrible situation hope that there's help at that spot, that there's adults that will understand, that will intervene, and that will keep you safe. And like, so as my personal experience in foster care, it was like amazing.
Yeah.
Great program.
Thanks for that. When we go into communities to help them start Safe Place programs, people initially think this is when a kid runs away and we don't have an emergency shelter in our community, so we can't provide a program. And as you saw, that's not the prevailing need. And to your point, you saw that also the numbers of kids that we reached, 250,000 kids. That's true prevention. When a kid recognizes in a school assembly that a Safe Place coordinator is presented to, that these things are out there, there is hope, there is access. A lot of times Safe Place coordinators have kids come up after and say, hey, I'm kind of having some trouble at home. It's true prevention. It gets them thinking about it and thinking about, it helps young people who don't often have the ability to think far out, right, about this may be headed in a direction that's not good. And now I'm aware of it and I should start to work on that now.
And in addition to that, I think like a resource for foster youth when they're going to a new placement or a new home, like that's one advice I've given my peers is know where your nearest safe place is. Like especially I know there's not physical locations in some places in Indiana, but I know when I was moved to a new foster home or something, that was one of the first things I wanted to know in case I needed help, that I could run there and somebody would.
That's rewarding and for both of us to hear. Thank you for that.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think next up, Mark is gonna efficiently go through his fairly long agenda here until we get to the final.
Let the
close.
record show that the words mark and efficiently were used in the
Yeah.
same sentence.
Yeah.
So we'll see how we can do on that. No, actually, we should be able to move through most of what I have remaining here. A couple of things I just want to touch on is a final status on our legislative actions update. So you'll see listed in the agenda the different bills that we interacted with. These are all ones where direct contact was made with legislators, letters of support were written, and on Senate bills 1194 to 171 and 1051, we provided testimony in committee. Happy to say all of those moved forward and went through the process fully. The bills that remain on human trafficking language and trauma-informed care are ones we're going to be returning to next year. But I can say very successful session for kind of our first time making a little bit of a deeper, more concerted effort, getting involved in that and seeing good movement there. And along with that, also noting in the agenda, some items for a potential study from the commission moving forward. This is an area where we found as we were more present at the State House, looking at opportunities where there were issues that maybe didn't come to full resolution, that still needed work, that needed fleshed out in more detail, that could see the value of more attention being given to them through an entity like the commission. These are ones where we were there to really raise our hand and say, let's see what we can do in that space and see if we can get a little bit more information gathered for you, look at some potential recommendations, look at potential legislation moving forward. And we're very glad to be there for those discussions. So I'll touch on them because I think we have items on all of them of how we're going to try to be involved there. One of them was the Guardian Ad Litem and CASA networks. A lot of stuff going on there, a lot of really good stuff going on through those groups. And of course, regularly there's concerns about, are they properly supported? Are they properly regulated? What kind of eyes do we have on those systems to make sure they have what they need and they're doing what they need to be doing? I will be having at our August meeting, the state Guardian Ad Litem and CASA director coming in to just give a very broad overview of those programs, the differences, similarities, what they do, and what some of their areas of need are. And I think that'd be a good starting point to look at moving forward, whether it be in policy recommendations or just ways that we can support them further as the commission, where we can go from there. So that was one that came up that really didn't see a direct activity during session, but there was enough discussion there that we really felt it's an area that we could be useful on. So that'll be an August item for us. Also, online safety and digital well-being. A couple of bills that moved a little bit and did some very, I won't say basic, but some very specific work in as far as protecting minors from access to certain websites and things like that. And boy, what great segues we got from our presenter today. There's a lot going on in that digital space. And I'll actually note our enabling legislation specifically talks about working in digital well-being and online safety. But we don't have that assigned specifically to a task force at this point. And what I would ask for consideration today is that we assign it to our newest created task force because of all the overlap that was laid out so nicely. I don't think I have to make the case for it. That along with suicide prevention and bullying prevention, we look at online safety and digital well-being within that same task force for all the reasons that we already heard today.
Do we have a motion? Second? All in favor? All opposed? All right.
All right. Very good. And then next on that list, we did see a bill get some progress this year, but I think a lot of still discussion on what the long-term plan is going to be. And that's looking at truancy prevention and chronic absenteeism. We've seen a great uptick since COVID. I think there was a lot of hope that maybe post-COVID, we return to normal levels on some of those, but it simply has not happened. And we got a lot of schools that are asking for help there, a lot of communities that are trying to find resources. We heard from the youth service bureaus how they're doing some work in this space as well, but nobody's got the solution yet. So we did some exploring about where this could fit within the Children's Commission. We do have within our Juvenile Justice and Cross Systems Youth Task Force a subcommittee that works on status offenses, of which that's where truancy as an offense would go under. We also have in the Youth Justice Oversight Committee, which was grown out of the commission and now it's become an offshoot looking at juvenile justice issues, a group that's specialized in diversion, which is when there's those early touch points into the justice system. Very often that we're talking status offenses there too. They are also working on truancy currently. So what I would like to do there is really just look at formally assigning that within our task force that's looking at status offenses, assigning truancy, prevention and chronic absenteeism as the primary status offense they work on at this time. And that we also do that in conjunction with the work of the Youth Justice Oversight Committee. I can say both of those entities also share a chairperson. So we've got a good position there as far as there's already work cross-sectioning there. We're just asking them to elevate truancy, prevention and chronic absenteeism as kind of a primary role that they can be looking at further. So I'd be just asking for permission from this group to request that they elevate those and make those primary status offenses to look into.
We have a motion to elevate those items? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, elevated.
Right. Wonderful. So I think we've captured a lot of the stuff that was discussed today. It's always great when our presenters kind of beat us to to some of this. So we've got a lot going on there. We've got a lot of, it sounds like great new partners to bring into that work and continue trying to improve there. One more item is talking about the Day of the Child that we had at the State House. So this is an event we've done annually for some time. Where we at the State House work with the Indiana Youth Institute on doing a presentation on the House or Senate floor on the status of children at that time. This year, we brought in an additional partner with the Marion County Commission on Youth that promoted having youth physically present there at the State House. They were able to get about 500 young people there present. It was a pretty packed day at the State House, and the House floor and the gallery were packed full of kids for this one. Great to see. We gave them additional engagement opportunities, learning experiences there. So immediately after that, we talked about how we could expand that further. I'm excited to say next year, also on President's Day and the day after President's Day, we'll be doing that event again, but we're building in for the day after President's Day, convening of a lot of the youth serving groups and organizations, and specifically some of the youth boards. We had representation from one today, where we're going to look at how we can elevate and support them and give them some real detailed training. So the youth have already said, I want to be a part of the solution, creating a space where we can really wrap around that and build that and let them grow their community even greater. There's dozens of these groups and boards and committees out there that youth are leading. And I think it's a great place for the commission to say, how can we pull that all together and offer all the support we possibly can? So excited for next year on that one. All right, my last item, unfortunately not a positive one to end the day on, is we do note that we have an empty seat today for Senator Gene Breaux. Served on the commission for a number of years since 2017. And of course, I've been at the State House longer than that. Deeply missing her in a lot of our work. I know we missed her at the State House this year. And also known for her spirit of collaboration, civility, working together, however it had to be done to get the right thing done. Her work in public health was tremendous. Her work for youth, maternal mortality reduction, and all of those different systems, access to healthcare, was simply tremendous. So one action that I'm honored to be able to take is where we're going to be renaming our internship that we have, paid internship that's offered in the fall. And instead of just having that as the Children's Commission internship program, it will now be the Senator Jean Breaux Collaboration Fellowship. So
That's great.
again, honored to be able to do a small piece of remembering somebody who really embodied what this commission is all about. Obviously, her spirit will live on in many other ways, but I'm glad to have her name associated with us permanently for her efforts. Right. And that is all my items for today, and I was efficient.
We're about, are you at maybe 30 seconds left? Maybe we're a little over. Just one administrative note, you see there's 4 remaining meetings. The one change is we switched from, I think it was the original June 19th. Now it's June 18th. I'm sure Mark will make sure that it's reflected on everyone's calendars, but to the extent you need to make that change, that is the only change of those 4 remaining dates. Have a great day, and thank you for all our presenters today. We're adjourned.